So what if the jolt of energy you feel from your morning coffee is just a complete illusion? Like, what if the caffeine isn't actually doing the heavy lifting at all?
Yeah, what if your own brain is just, tricking you into waking up?
Uh-huh.
It completely upends how we think about our daily habits.
It really does. Welcome to the deep dive, everyone. We are going to explore the multi-layered experience of our daily coffee habit today.
And we treat that morning cup as this straightforward transaction, right? Like a physical delivery system for a chemical compound. You put the fuel in the engine and the car drives.
Exactly. But the reality is actually far more psychological. So our mission today is twofold. First, we'll trace the cultural evolution of how we drink coffee.
Right, looking at how it went from this bitter, mass-produced morning chore to a celebrated craft.
Yeah, and then we're going to pivot to the surprising neuroscience behind why it actually makes us feel so good.
We're pulling from two really fantastic sources today for this. For the cultural history side, we have an insightful piece by Gina Cordoba for Tracer Coffee.
That one's titled Third Wave Coffee, The Evolution of Coffee Culture and Quality.
Yes. And then, to test the psychological power of that morning cup, we're looking at a fascinating science project by Felix Lewandowski and Benny Gervitz.
Which is called a cup of placebo effect.
Yeah.
So to understand the psychological hold coffee has on us, we really have to start with how our relationship to the bean has evolved.
Because we didn't just wake up one day obsessing over latte art and, tasting notes. The industry actually breaks this history down into waves.
Right, and those waves represent fundamental shifts in human behavior and consumer values. Let's start with the first wave.
Yeah, the first wave was all about pure utility. Picture the post-war era, the boom of convenience culture in the mid-20th century.
So we're talking about the era of instant coffee crystals and giant tin cans of pre-ground supermarket brands.
Exactly. It was purely about getting caffeine into the bloodstream as cheaply and consistently as possible. There was absolutely no romance to it.
Zero romance.
Right. The priorities were affordability, a long shelf life, and consistent flavor, even if that flavor was notoriously harsh.
Yeah, coffee was treated as a basic household commodity, right? Like indistinguishable from flour or sugar.
Spot on. You didn't ask where it was grown. You just scooped it out of a tin to survive the morning commute. The manufacturing process, like freeze drying, stripped away most of the natural oils.
Just to make it shelf stable.
Yeah, basically. But eventually, society wanted more than just basic utility. And that brings us to the second wave.
Which shifted coffee from a morning fuel to a social destination. Yeah. This is the era of the cafe culture explosion, right?
Yes, espresso drinks hitting the mainstream and massive chains like Starbucks taking over every single corner.
So this is where we get the concept of the third place.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Sociologically, this is a space outside of your home and your workplace where you can gather, linger, and socialize.
And the product itself changed too, right? Because we saw the introduction of flavored syrups, blended iced drinks, and this huge focus on a standardized brand experience.
Right. You could walk into a chain in Seattle or Tokyo and get the exact same vanilla latte.
But to achieve that global consistency, they had to roast the life out of the beans, right?
He really did. When you're sourcing millions of pounds of coffee from wildly different farms globally, the only way to make it all taste the same is to roast it very, very dark.
So you're essentially tasting the roasting process, like the char, rather than the bean itself.
Yeah, it creates a bold, bitter base that cuts through large amounts of milk and sugar.
Okay, let's unpack this. Is it fair to say the first wave is like a microwave TV dinner? Pure, cheap convenience?
That's a great way to look at it.
And the second wave is like a popular chain restaurant where you know exactly what the menu looks like and the vibe is comfortable.
Yes.
And the third wave is a Michelin star farm-to-table experience where they literally tell you the name of the cow your butter came from.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, that analogy is spot on. The third wave is a massive philosophical rejection of the commodity mindset.
It prioritizes radical transparency, craftsmanship, and a deep respect for the agricultural origin of the product, right?
Exactly. It's no longer about the cafe's brand logo. It's about the specific farmer, the plot of land the beans grew on, and the precise method used to brew them.
And Gina Cordoba points out in her piece that independent roasters and cafes were the real catalysts here. They started treating coffee as an artisanal craft.
Pioneers like Stumptown and Intelligentsia didn't just change the flavor profile. They fundamentally restructured the economics of the supply chain.
Because before this, coffee was traded on the sea market, right?
Yeah, the global commodities exchange where prices fluctuate wildly.
Right.
That often leaves farmers operating at a huge loss.
Right.
So third wave roasters popularized direct trade. They traveled to the farms, cut out the middlemen, and paid massive premiums for higher quality lots.
Oh, wow. So they proved that treating beans as unique, seasonal agricultural products could be both ethical and profitable.
Yes, it's a total paradigm shift. Consumers suddenly found themselves staring at menus listing farm names, processing methods like washed or natural.
And tasting notes of jasmine or blueberry?
Exactly. And that level of detail forces the consumer to become an active participant. You aren't just drinking, you're tasting.
But this philosophical shift also completely changes the physical chemistry of what is in your cup. Let's get into the mechanics of that.
Let's do it. Because the third wave dictates exactly how the coffee is processed, starting with the roast.
Right, because dark roasting commodity coffee is kind of like turning the bass all the way up on a bad song.
That's a perfect analogy. It drowns out the vocals and hides all the mistakes in the recording, but it ruins any nuance.
So when you buy cheap beans with defects, roasting them dark burns away the flaws.
Exactly. The third wave, however, relies on exceptional raw ingredients, so they use immense restraint. They prefer light roasting.
And the science behind that is all about preserving the bean's original cellular structure, right?
Precisely. A coffee bean is the seed of a cherry. It naturally contains sugars, fruit acids, and complex organic compounds.
So light roasting stops the heating process before those sugars completely caramelize and turn bitter.
Right. It preserves the bean's terroir.
I want to pause on that word, terroir. We hear it in wine all the time. How does the environment actually change the chemical makeup of a coffee bean?
Well, it really comes down to stress and soil. Coffee grown at very high altitudes, like in Ethiopia, experiences cold nights.
Okay.
And the cold slows down the maturation of the coffee cherry. That forces the plant to pump more complex sugars into the seed to protect it.
Ah, I see.
Yeah, so when you lightly roast that Ethiopian bean, those dense sugars express themselves as sparkling acidity and floral notes like citrus and jasmine.
And alternatively, lower altitude Colombian beans might absorb different minerals from volcanic soil, leaning more toward caramel and nuttiness.
You got it. It's
Yep.
fascinating chemistry.
I have to play devil's advocate here, though, because I'm sure you listening might have experienced this. It sounds beautiful in theory, but is a lighter roast really objectively better?
That's a very fair question.
Because sometimes, is it just a trendy way to serve under-roasted, overly sour coffee just to make it feel exclusive?
Yeah, that's a very common and honestly often justified critique of poorly executed third-wave coffee.
Right.
But true specialty coffee isn't just a trend. It's backed by rigorous, standardized grading. Organizations like the Specialty Coffee Association have a 100-point scale.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Yeah, certified Q graders, who are basically the sommeliers of coffee blind taste and score beans based on aroma, flavor, aftertaste, acidity, and body.
So to earn a specialty grade, a coffee must score 80 points or above, right?
Yes, and have 0 primary defects. So the light roast is justified because the raw product is nearly physically perfect.
And the culture around this is intense. Like, cafes hold public cuppings, which are these formal, strictly controlled tastings.
Yeah, to educate the consumer's palate.
Right.
They want you to taste the difference between an 82-point coffee and a 90-point coffee.
And that obsessive attention to detail extends right down to the final step, the extraction. In the third wave, manual brewing is basically a high art science experiment.
It really is. Gina Cordoba highlights a few specific methods, and the mechanics of how they work are fascinating.
Take the pour over. You're using a paper filter which physically traps the insoluble coffee oils and ultrafine particles.
Exactly. And the result is a very clean, translucent, delicate cup where those bright, fruity notes can shine without being muddied by a heavy texture.
Contrast that with a French press, which is an immersion method. The grounds sit entirely submerged in water.
Right, and the metal mesh filter allows all those natural oils and microscopic sediment into the final cup. It creates a bold, full-bodied, highly textured experience.
And then there's the AeroPress, which uses pneumatic air pressure to force the water through the coffee puck.
Yeah, that speeds up extraction and creates a highly concentrated, complex shot. But with all these methods, it's the preparation that blows my mind.
Right. You're using a digital scale to weigh the water down to the gram. You're checking the water temperature with a thermometer.
And you're performing the bloom.
Yes. Explain the bloom, because I see baristas doing this all the time. They pour a little water and just stare at it.
Well, when coffee is roasted, Carbon dioxide gas gets trapped inside the cellular structure of the bean.
Okay.
When you grind it and hit it with hot water, that gas rapidly escapes. The coffee literally bubbles and expands. It blooms.
Oh, wow. So if you just dump all your water in at once, what happens?
That escaping gas actually repels the water, leading to an uneven sour extraction.
Right.
So by pouring a small amount of water first and waiting 30 seconds, you allow the gas to degas. That ensures the rest of the water can evenly dissolve the flavor compounds.
It's a massive multisensory ritual. You're grinding single origin beans, you're watching the bloom expand, you're inhaling those volatile aromatics.
It really is an experience.
But here's the catch with all this intense, beautiful third-wave craftsmanship. What if none of that flavor complexity or careful chemistry is actually what's waking you up?
And this is where we collide the art of coffee with the brutal reality of neuroscience.
Yes. Let's look at this incredible project by Felix Lewandowski and Benny Gerbitz called A Cup of Placebo Effect.
They set out to test whether the profound effect our morning cup has on our mood, the alertness, the readiness to face the day, is actually coming from the chemical caffeine.
Or from our brains anticipating the result of the ritual. The experimental design here is beautifully elegant.
It is. They took 40 adults and split them into 2 groups of 20.
Right. One group received a caffeinated coffee, specifically a Furtado Nespresso pod.
And the other group received a decaf Furtado Nespresso pod.
The crucial detail here is that this was a double-blind test. Not only did the participants not know which pod they were getting, but the people handing them the coffee didn't know either.
Yeah, and that double-blind factor is so important for a study like this, because humans are incredibly perceptive.
Right. If the researcher knows they're handing someone decaf, they might unconsciously change their body language.
Exactly. Their tone of voice or their facial expression. The participant might pick up on that subtle tell and adjust their expectations.
So a double-blind setup completely isolates the variables. After the participants drank their coffee, the researchers had them fill out surveys.
Yes, to measure their responses in 3 specific areas: alertness, energy, and grumpiness.
Measuring subjective feelings like grumpiness is notoriously difficult in science, though.
Oh, absolutely. But they designed the surveys to look for measurable shifts in self-reported physical and emotional states.
Right. They wanted to see if the physical absence of caffeine would manifest in lethargy, irritability, or the classic symptoms of caffeine withdrawal.
And here's where it gets really interesting.
Yes, because the study is essentially a blind wine tasting. But instead of looking for notes of oak or berries, the researchers are measuring whether the participants are ready to conquer the day or if they are going to bite someone's head off because they didn't get their fix.
What's fascinating here is how this experiment isolates 2 intertwined mechanisms.
Right. Every time you drink a cup of coffee, you are experiencing the physiological effect of the caffeine binding to adenosine receptors in your brain, preventing you from feeling sleepy.
But simultaneously, you are experiencing the psychological effect of the ritual itself.
Ah, I see.
So by secretly removing the chemical component, Felix and Benny isolated the psychological one.
So imagine the scene. We have 20 adults walking around, fully believing they just consumed a powerful central nervous system stimulant, but their brains are actually running on 0 chemical assistance.
The tension is real.
Did the lack of caffeine result in a room full of grumpy, yawning people?
Actually, the researchers' observations were striking. They noted that most people in the decaf group did not feel grumpy or lethargic at all.
Wait, really?
Yeah. By and large, they reported feeling perfectly fine, alert, and energized, statistically mirroring the caffeinated group.
Are you saying the caffeine genuinely didn't matter?
Well, it mattered far less than we assume. The researchers identified a powerful confounding variable.
Which was?
The psychological response to the environment. The simple act of being handed a free, warm cup of coffee boosted the participants' overall moods.
We need to explain how the brain actually pulls that off. Like, how does a thought turn into physical energy?
It's classical conditioning, just like Pavlov's dogs. Over years of drinking coffee, your brain has built a powerful associative network.
So when you feel the warmth of the mug, when you smell the roasted aromatics, when you hear the sound of the brewing machine,
your brain recognizes the pattern. It says, I know what happens next. Caffeine is coming.
So the brain doesn't even wait for the caffeine to hit the bloodstream.
Exactly. The brain is a prediction engine. It preemptively releases a cascade of neurotransmitters, like dopamine and adrenaline, based purely on the environmental cues.
Oh.
Yeah, the ritual itself triggers the neurochemical reward. The joy and sensory experience of the moment completely overrode the lack of actual chemical caffeine.
That is staggering. Our neuroplasticity is so powerful that the mere context of the ritual tripped their physical bodies into generating their own energy.
It really is incredible.
And it's worth noting the community effort that went into uncovering this. The researchers specifically thanked Gabby Breitman-Lewandowski for organizing the participants and accessing the Mount Royal University Library for research.
Yes. And Dennis Lewandowski helped crunch all that survey data in Excel.
Plus, Jennifer Gervitz managed the logistics of getting the participants involved. It's a great reminder of how collaborative scientific inquiry really is.
It also grounds the science in the real world. I mean, these are everyday people asking questions about a habit we all share.
Right. And the researchers pointed out a massive, highly practical application for this project.
By understanding how easily the placebo effect works in our daily lives, we can be much more cautious and critical consumers.
They specifically mentioned using this knowledge to guard against snake oil treatments. Let's bridge that gap. How does a decaf Nespresso relate to a fake wellness fad?
Well, think about the mechanics of the placebo effect we just discussed. If your brain can convince your body that a decaf pod is a powerful stimulant simply because of the sensory cues and your own expectations,
Yeah.
imagine how vulnerable you are to clever marketing. If you buy a highly expensive wellness supplement or participate in a trendy health treatment with elaborate soothing rituals, your brain is going to manufacture a positive physical response.
Because you expect it to work, and you've invested time and money into the ritual of taking it.
Exactly. You might feel cured or energized or detoxed, but it's your own expectation engine doing the work, not the $50 bottle of green powder.
Right.
Understanding our own psychological blind spots, realizing that our brains can physically manifest response based on pure context, makes us immune to a lot of modern snake oil.
So what does this all mean? We have two compelling narratives colliding here. On one hand, we have the beautiful, intricate, third wave coffee movement.
Yeah, which tells us that the physical chemistry, the high-altitude terroir, the meticulous roasting, and the exact gram weight of the pour-over are of the utmost importance.
But on the other hand, we have Felix and Benny's neuroscience study showing us that a decaf pod and a friendly smile can trick our brains into feeling just as great.
Right.
Are we wasting our time and money obsessing over the perfect third wave extraction if the placebo effect is doing all the heavy lifting anyway?
This raises an important question, and synthesizing these two sources provides a pretty profound answer.
Okay, let's hear it.
The realization isn't that the third wave is a waste of time. The realization is that the ritual is the medicine.
The ritual creates the reality.
Yes. The third wave isn't just about extracting better flavor compounds. It's about building a more engaging, mindful, sensory-rich routine.
So when you take 5 minutes out of your chaotic morning to weigh your beans, watch the bloom expand, and smell the floral notes of an Ethiopian roast, you are sending a powerful psychological signal to your nervous system.
Exactly. You are creating a buffer against the stress of the day. The psychological comfort and the mindful attention of that routine are just as impactful as the chemical jolt of the caffeine.
They work in tandem.
They absolutely do.
It completely reframes why we love this drink so much. It's not just fuel for the engine, it's a psychological anchor.
Right. We might crave the chemical dependency, but we are equally dependent on the comfort of the sequence.
The sound of the grinder, the warmth of the ceramic.
Our brains associate those sensory inputs with well-being to the point where the caffeine is almost just a bonus.
So to quickly recap this journey, we started by tracing coffee's evolution from a mass-market, freeze-dried commodity focused purely on utility to the artful, transparent, and economically revolutionary third wave movement.
We looked at the intense chemistry and care that goes into honoring the terroir of the bean.
But then we learned from a brilliantly designed placebo experiment that our own minds are the most powerful ingredient in the cup.
Right. Our brains are capable of generating energy and good moods entirely on their own through classical conditioning and power of expectation.
So tomorrow morning, when you're standing in your kitchen and you lift that warm mug to your face, take a second before that first sip.
Yeah.
Ask yourself, are you actually about to feel the chemical hit of the caffeine? Or is your brain already releasing dopamine just from the profound, deeply ingrained comfort of your favorite daily ritual?
Which leads to a fascinating lingering thought.
Oh, what's that?
Well, if the placebo effect is truly powerful enough to elevate our mood and energy through the mere anticipation of a warm beverage, could we hypothetically hack our own neurochemistry?
Wait, how so?
Well, think about the mechanics of classical conditioning. If you secretly swapped your own coffee beans for a high-quality decaf, but you maintain the exact same elaborate, sensory-rich third-wave brewing ritual.
You mean like the digital scale, the precise water temperature, the smell of the bloom?
Exactly. Could you entirely eliminate your physical dependency on caffeine while keeping 100% of the psychological productivity boost?
Wow.
It's something to chew on or, well, sip on tomorrow morning.